Paint with me in my brand new sketchbook, or I don't know if it's a sketchbook, it's like an art journal, a watercolor sketchbook. This moth, isn't it so pretty? Um, so we're gonna start painting. I already traced it out and drew it in and did all the things. We are going to use watercolor, and I'm going to use maybe I may change my mind, but I may use a little bit of gouache. So the sketchbook I'm using is not white. It's kind of a tan color, which I don't know if you can see, but it's really pretty. So it's my first time going to try and paint on this. I have two different brushes, one with a small point, one with a big point. I always like to measure with my pinky, like a little bit less than half or half your pinky, and then obviously half of that, just small. You can decide what you want to do. Because there's not a lot of because there's not a lot of white, I think I'm going to use some gouache, and I just have a box full of gouache. There's no specific brand. I do have the Arteza brand, but I also have the Fine Touch, and then I also have this one, and then I also have all kinds of different ones. So I don't think it really matters. There's a different one too. Which one you want? I do have a palette that I only leave my gouache, and gouache is kind of like watercolor where you can activate it again and again and again. For that, I am spraying it down. I like to let it sit in water to just kind of dilute. My watercolor paint palette, I do not spray down. So I'm just going to spray it a little bit. Definitely the white. I'm spraying it just so I don't spray everything over here. So you kind of just want to make it wet. Don't know if you can see, especially the white. So you can activate and get all, sometimes I take a little toothpick and I just kind of mix it. So I'm going to leave the paint palette over here until I'm ready for that. And I'm going to start by adding light layers of pink, and then I can come back and add some whites on top. And then, of course, where will I put this so I can see? Over here. And then, of course, details will be last. So interesting on this one, I cannot, even though I can do a little strip so I can see the color, it's going to look different since it's going to be on tan. So these little stripples. So it's going to look a little interesting. Also, it doesn't have to look like this moth. It can look like the moth I'm painting. Moth can be whatever I want to. Okay, so first of all, I am going to use my, I put some Payne's Gray here. And I'm going to add a tiny bit of kind of like a brownish color. Let me see, what color is this? Brown, it's kind of brown. I'm going to mix those two together. So it's kind of like a dark brown. I think this one is called sepia, and then Payne's Gray to get like a brownish gray color. And I'm going to start by painting the wings. Now, you do want to make like fuzzy, uneven edges. when you are touching that middle part. I'm just going to start in this corner, cleaning my brush, sucking up a little bit, using water to move it, and keep on dabbing if you start painting and you feel you have a lot of water. So I can get that watercolor effect right. So I want to kind of blend it in. I want to make sure it's a little uneven on that side. See if I can zoom in a little bit. And while it's still wet, you can definitely drop in color close. So it goes a little bit more from dark to light. Now with anything that's very symmetrical, whatever you do on the one side, you need to repeat on the other side. So I would just go ahead and do the same thing. Clean my brush, suck it up, blend it out. I'm getting stuck with my chair. Okay. And blend it out. Dot in a little bit more color, especially over here where it's touching or towards the middle. Edges are a little uneven. And then it's really fun to see how it actually dries. If you feel you are making hard lines, just come back with your wet brush and dab on the sides or on the lines. Gonna let that dry, and I'm gonna do the same at the top, making halfway or quarter kind of size, and then clean my brush, touch the water, touch the towel, blend it out. I'm going to leave that little strip open for now, just because I know I am going to blend it in one big blob, and I want to try not to do that. I'm going to go like this. My line is actually here. It's a little light to see. So I'm cleaning, touching. Make sure you suck up that drop of water so it's not too wet. Okay, so you want to see kind of the watermarks. You don't really need to blend it so perfectly. It is a painting. Always say that to yourself. It's just a painting. Okay. Now I'm going to come back. I'm going to let that dry a little bit. So I'm not really going to do over here. And then I'm going to use the same color with the brown. Now I mixed it new, so now it looks a little different. And I'm going to do these lines. Between these lines, I'm going to go like this. Can go up there if you have a little space. Go, go, go. I like to paint up and down, or this is a little bit more diagonal, because my lines are uneven instead of making a hard edge outline. And then when I come back, clean my brush, suck it up, and I pull it out, I can do it a little bit more uneven versus if I had that harsh line. So I kind of like to do it this way. I'm going to get a little bit more paint grain here, especially on this side. And by painting up and down or kind of diagonal, you get, it dries and you get that really nice uneven kind of texture versus a harsh outline. So this works for me. Hopefully you can still see your pencil lines. Okay, so I'm just adding a tiny bit to the edge like this. Blend it in. Make sure you touch your towel a few times so it's not too wet. It's still the paint gray and the brown. And I will maybe do it a few times, depends. And then I'm going to move on to the next side and see how it dries. I kind of try to stay in those, between those lines that I drew, you know, these lines. It kind of looks like the wing. I'm getting a little bit more paint. Okay, same thing on this side. Uneven edges, kind of try to stay in those lines. You have to be a little fast so your paint doesn't dry. So even if you want to go back and like tap, 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 never make a very harsh line. Just tap, 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 and then clean, touch, spread it out. Maybe add a little bit more paint. Clean, touch. Always blend it so you kind of see what happened, and especially before it dries out too much or too quickly. This side is a little darker, so you want to come back. And then quickly soften it. I also, like I did on this one, do like a little uneven edge. Again, I try not to outline. I would tap, 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 tap. And then blend it out. And this way you can also see where your wing ends. So imagine you don't see your pencil line anymore. You kind of see where your wing ends. I may have to do it a little bit on this side also. And then if you do the little tap, 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 it's definitely more organic. Oh, my sun just went away. So there's a change in, oh boy, big clouds outside. Okay. The wings over here at the bottom have a tiny bit more pink in them. But before I'm going to go to that, I may want to go back. Let me go back before I mix new paint. Go back in here and do this little guy here. Same idea. I just wanted to make it separate so they don't just flow and become one big blob. Leaving that tiny little point. I'm going to do the same on this side. Need some more paint. Clean my brush, touch my towel, blend it in. Remember, we are smack in the middle of the ugly face, so we may not like it yet. Getting there. Now I want to do all of this. Again, super soft. So I ended there. I know I'm going to make like a big, I'm going to make like a black little line. So even if it feels everything I'm doing now is kind of smooching it together. I'm going to add a little bit. Oh, so that line is a little dark. So because I just made new paint, so all I'm doing is I clean my brush and I'm blending it out. I'm going to do the same on this side. And I always go for lighter because you can always come back and add more layers. But if you're so dark, it will just be hard to try to add, you know, to come back and help it if it's so dark. So stay light. And then I'm going to come and add all this. I'm going to do the same thing, just a little bit lighter. So maybe dip your brush into water before you start painting and leave like a little space here and there. Let me just show you what I mean. Leave like a little white space on either side. So the black line is going to touch here. That's why I wasn't so worried if I didn't do, because I know I can come back with the black and fix up my lines. And then the white or the lighter line will be in the middle. So leave the smallest edge unevenly spaced. This one, I don't think we will blend in a lot, but let's see if it goes. I'm going to do this as I'm stay between those lines or the veins, probably. You can let them touch. It's just you kind of want to. And then when we get to this side, you may need some more water to make your brush lighter. I will just go over that. Touch a little bit of the blue. And then you always have to wait for it to dry, right? So you can see what it actually looks like. Remember to leave a little edge. If you can, try to make your edge more or less the same. I kind of stayed between those vein lines also, so it shows me what direction I should paint. So my stroke, so even if it dries, it kind of dries in those liney stages, which I think is good. Okay, now I can come back. So I have all of those. Okay, now let's go back to, let's do this. Two more places, I think. We can add a little bit of this gray. Again, we want to make sure that our butterfly stays. Or not stays, but you can see it. So I'm going to do a little outside edge like this. And even if you make a little line, come back and kind of mess it up with your brush. Lighter is still better. So even if you think you cannot really see it, lighter is still better. And then we can always come back and add more layers. So when we are done and we feel, oh, we need to make it darker, we can. But always stay light, and then we can come back and add more. So I'm doing that. Where they are touching, I'm making a little outline. That's just slightly bit darker. I may have to come back and do it again. And then I touch the edge with my brush to just soften it so it can blend in. So it kind of, it just makes a soft shadow. And then I am going to, so this is all I'm going to do on this white section. I only wanted to give a little outside edge. And like I said, if we're done with everything and all the pieces are in and we cannot see it, we can always come back and add more. I'm going to come back and add a little bit of pink mixing in with this color to do a soft little kind of blushy effect. So if I can use my stroke again. So it's this color with a lot of water, right? So the brown, the Payne's gray. And then a tiny bit of pink. Now the pink may look weird. So a bit of yellow and pink will give a nice kind of effect. So if you can mix a tiny bit of yellow with your pink. So if this is your pink, and I always like to use the sunshine yellow. And if you mix that together with your brown, Payne's gray brownish, we should get a pretty color, like a little blush. More brown. See how it kind of just tints it a little bit. And we can always come back and add more. So this is kind of just a warmer pinkish. It reminds me kind of a sunset. So brown, your paint, your same color you just used. And I normally scoop it and put it down somewhere else on my paint palette. And then when I mix in the pink, I still have some of my original color left. And then I always like to do this so I can just have a little reference what I just mixed, so I can make sure that it is mixing or matching. And then we're going to do here. So it can touch this top line because we're going to make a black line right there. So we're going to make it so it doesn't matter if it's, so it can touch. And I'm just going to stay in those lines again. And then blend it out a little bit. I always like to add water because it just makes it pretty when it dries and you see that watercolor effects versus if you just paint it and it just dries. It looks cute. And then I can use water and I can smush it out. And I'm going to do the same here. Make sure you touch. Adding a little bit of water. Mixing more paint, which is, you can never mix enough paint. It looks a little bit different on my tan paper, but you should get the same results. And kind of come back and mess it up. Some pencil lines are a little darker. That's why you can see over here a little bit more, but it's just pencil lines. Okay, now, so we see a little bit more of this wing just because this one is on top. So we don't see all the way up here because it's right here. You just cannot see it. Okay, now I want to come back and let me see. I need to jump a little bit. Okay, let's go back to this wing. So there are two spots on his wings. And I'm actually going to use the same, I think the same color we just used on top would look actually pretty. Remember, we can change it up. We can do what we want. So I'm going to use a color that's closer to this, like a hint of a pink, not full on. And then just going to add it on top. So the pink will match the pink at the bottom, but because you already have the bluish background, you're going to paint it on top and it's not going to be so pink. It's just going to be a hint of a different color so you can actually see the spots. See the spots. See the spots. Okay. I need to let that dry. Let's go. I'm trying to think. So let's go and do only the pink antennas. I don't know if I call antennas. Those pink thingies. Now, I like to mix pink and yellow together to get a color like this. The more, obviously, you can play with the ratio of pink and yellow. I kind of like that it gives me like a warmer pinkish yellow. So I am going to mix that. And then again, instead of just making a line, I'm going to see if I can just kind of do a little fuzzy, kind of more of a fuzz. So it looks more texture. And it will also dry with texture. If you have too much water in your brush, you may need to touch your towel. So more of a fuzzy effect versus just painting it in. So, and don't try to paint those two on the sides yet because it is too wet. And then I'm going to use that same color because we have it. So we may as well use it more. And I am going to do lines of these fuzzies. Now, we may have to come back and add a little bit more, but first layers needs to dry. So I'm going to come back and just add a few lines. I need to put my hand down to make sure that my lines can stay skinny and go over them. Don't just make them in the same direction. And it's kind of a curve towards your right hand corner, I want to say. Something like that. A little bit more water helpful, but be careful if it's too wet, it's too difficult. And your lines will just become very splodgy. So just be careful. Too much water, do this. Suck it up and paint again. You don't need to take more paint. You just need to get rid of that drop of water. And we're gonna do our first layer like this. It's not pretty yet. This one was a little bit too wet, so you can see how everything is just flowing to each other. That's okay. Lighter is always better because remember, we're going to come back and add. I'm going to also add a small amount of fuzzies here. Again, control the water in your brush. Okay, so we have some pink. Okay, let's go more into, so you can decide to go the black or the Payne's gray, doesn't really matter. I sometimes lean towards making my black bluish or purplish or greenish just because I don't always like the black, but you can decide what color you want to go for. I'm going to use the Payne's gray. It's more towards the, oh, sun is gone again. It's more towards the bluish black. And I am going to outline, first of all, you can stay with your same big brush or you can switch to a smaller brush. I think, let's do this and then we switch. Okay, I'm going to go like this. I'm going to add a solid kind of black, but again, I use tiny little lines to get to that. I don't just going to outline it. I want to make tiny little lines. It needs to look like the texture of the wing. I'm going to go all the way around. I'm going to give him a little spot in the middle. And I'm trying my best to repeat what I just did. Your pink should be dry before you try this. If your pink is wet, it may just flow, so you don't want that. They look like two eyes. So for me, it's always a fun at this point to see how everything comes together, because as soon as you add the darker details, everything just starts to pop. I am going to do a small amount at the bottom here, touching my pink. Again, little tiny lines, uneven edge touching your pink. And touching your pink on this side. So even though you make lines, you still kind of want them to touch, right? So you don't want to see individual, but you kind of want to see this fuzzy. Let me see if it can zoom in. Oh, see, even you want to see that fuzzy kind of texture. Make sure you do whatever you do on the one side, repeat it on the other side. Small amount of water. Try only to dip your brush point in the cup and not the whole thing. I like it. Okay, so now we didn't paint the side, so Clean your brush of that dark color. Get your original color that you should maybe still some have left. I forgot to paint here. And then just make it less white, or in my case tan, but just fill it in with something so it's matching. Remember, there will be yellow here and yellow here and here. You don't have to go everywhere. Now I'm going to switch to a small brush, so the smaller one, and I'm going to do the black or paint gray or whatever color you decided on this outside edge. Again, make your lines a little squiggly. It doesn't have to be exactly the same width. And keep on going. Making your kind of your outline. I try to grab paint the whole time so it stay because as you paint you kind of lose paint, so to get it all to make it stay dark. Remember, it's touching, it shouldn't be on the side you left open, so it should be towards the top and towards the bottom. Keep on going until you reach. We're not going to do these fine lines yet. That will be towards the end because we first want to see if we would need to add more color or take, or, or pick. And as soon as you put those lines in, it's a little impossible to do that. So we're not going to do the lines. Switching back to my bigger brush. Instead of making it so very dark, I'm going to go more towards a browner bluish color. So add a tiny bit more brown for the top of his head. And to get the fuzzy look again, you kind of want to use tiny little lines, change direction, leave a few open spaces, especially touching here. Leave like a few open spaces, and you will see why. Yeah, so this can be your first layer that you can dry. Oh, I by accident went over his eye. Oh, I think it is eye. Yeah, so it's very open, you don't need to make it super full for now. Kind of like that. And then, I didn't went over his eye. I can be there. Let me just see if I can define the eye. Okay, now I want to do these other antennas. I'm calling them antennas. I'm not sure. Depending on what brown you have, many different browns, or you can just add a little bit of orange and yellow to your brown to get antenna color that kind of looks like this, like the terracotta pot color almost. So I'm gonna zoom. So like a terracotta pot kind of color. You can switch to a smaller brush. That would be easy, maybe. Make sure you clean your brush before you just start painting. Or dip it in your. I painted this the last time, so I just made sure I give it a good swirl. And then I'm gonna paint these in tiny little lines. They do have a lot of texture. And I'm just gonna paint it almost like a leaf. And if I can show you just with a bigger, like I'm doing this kind of in there, like veins on a leaf. Let me do the other one and I show you. Sometimes it is so fun to paint with a small brush, but you can add so much detail, and then you definitely need to be careful, and it will also take forever. So it's always so tempting to paint with a small brush, but sometimes bigger is better. Okay, so all I'm doing is I'm touching a little bit of the darker brown towards his head. Remember, his head is not finished yet. Oh. And it's not your eyes there. And I just added fluff to my antennas. I just did with my close-up, I saw it's very fuzzy. That looks cute. Okay, so because fuzz, right? We want the fuzz. Okay, now we want to come back with more of the pink to make, and then the yellow in between, and then the yellow. Let's do the yellows because that would give us a good idea. So again, it's just my sunshine yellow. I'm using my small brush for this because I'm carefully going to paint in between my painter's gray, so not to painter's gray, paint's gray, so I don't mix it. Ideally, you would have want to paint this first, but I wasn't thinking. I always do black last because, once it's there, it's so hard to paint around it. But it's okay. So I have some yellow. I also want to do yellow on this edge. Now, again, it would have been easier if we didn't paint the stripe, but sometimes it's just helpful. So just touch it. For me, I try to think of the texture I'm painting to. So I don't just want to drag my brush along and make a very hard line. So even if my line is a little uneven at some points, to me, it looks a little bit more natural. As soon as you touch your black, just clean your brush and then come back and do again. And then let it dry so it can dry, or else you're just gonna drag the color out. That happens. And I'm gonna do the same. So this is in the inside, I wanna say, where we left that little white spot or white edge. I'm also going to take some of this yellow and do a little bit here. So if you lost all your white spots, don't worry. And I'm also going to do, I'm just going to make his eyes yellow. I'm giving him yellow eyes. Okay, so hopefully you have a few white spots in here that you can do. The main thing you always have to remember is everything needs to dry. And then you can come back and layer on top, but everything needs to dry. This triangle fuzzy spot here, see if you can add a little bit of yellow on top. Maybe you want to really see it, but it looks cute. Just like this. Okay, so I added the edge all the way around. I added my spot at the bottom. I made his eyes. I added between my white spots on his head. And now I can come back and start by adding more layers. Now, you can switch to your bigger brush or you can stay with your small brush. I think I'm going to stay with my small brush because I want to add more, well, I'm gonna play with the pink. So, well, even though I say, well, let's see, because we can always switch. Make your pink puddle pink and a tiny bit of yellow. Oh, I just touched the wrong pink. Oh, yeah. This is the wrong pink. Hold on. More paint, less water will make your color darker. So, again, I'm placing down my hand like this. I'm going to go into the middle first. So, I'm going to change direction a little bit. Going around that yellow spot. Maybe touch a few insides. Going, not really crisscross, but not just up and down. I'm changing direction. So it's a few, and I'm just going to let it dry like this. Then I'm going to come back to the big sections. And I want to make sure that I do uneven up into that top, touching his head. And then I want to come back and fill it in. So now you do not want to lose all your light spots, but you do want to come back and add a few darker areas. So instead of just having one layer, I want to have two layers. I want to see some of the white, some of the light pink, some of the dark pink. And I'm going to do the same here. So this one, remember, was so wet. Kind of just blend into each other. And I'm going to add more fuzziness. And I'm going to let it dry. I'm going to mix a tiny bit of this pink that I have with some of the brown. Just the brown. You don't need the paint spray with it. And it can look something like this. almost like a burgundy. So it's pink and brown. Then you want to come back and you want to add it, especially on this middle triangle shape. Very small lines. Definitely here at the bottom. If your brush is too wet, touch your towel so you can have skinny lines. And you can even dilute it a little bit with water and maybe give you a few lines. But be careful that it's not too many lines, not too wet, because you don't want big lines. You just want a few small lines. And then we need to go back to its head. So this is kind of what my lines look like. Black and brown, or Payne's gray and brown. I'm using my small brush again. And I want to, same as we just did. So you don't want to lose all your first layers, but you want to come back and add a few more. And it needs to be a little darker. So make sure that you go a little bit less water, more paint. If you have a lot of big open or like yellow spaces, you can do a few little lines over them. So you can kind of have them go every direction. So no, don't just, I like to do very small lines, all directions. Control the water on your brush a lot because you do not want it to be too wet. And a few small fuzzy lines. Go a little on your antennas. Go a little in your eye. Have that yellow spaces. So by adding different layers in different values on top of each other, we can create depth like that. And then this is the part where you can kind of lift it up, look at it and see, I always like to, if I can quickly zoom out, hold it in front of me, like squint my eyes a little bit and see what is weird, what do I need? Okay. Switching to my big brush again, make sure you just clean your brush every single time. So let's add, because everything is dry on the wings. So now we can come back and we can add a few more things. So we're going to let that dry. And now we're going to come back and add a little swishy in these open spots. It's the same paint gray brownish color. I kind of do like a big, like a smiley face idea. I didn't go all the way. You can always drop in color a little bit and see how it can flow. Can, you know, touch a little here. If you have spaces over here that's a little lighter and you kind of just want to add a little bit more shadow areas, you can. I kind of like how this looks. I think it needs to be a little darker, so I'm just going to paint over it. So it's kind of matching this color, the dark outline color. I'm gonna paint like that. Don't go over your line. Kind of stops right there. And then clean your brush. So it's more matching. I'm also going to go back to these little spots and I'm going to do a little swishy on top towards the top. And I think I'm ready to do the outlines. So, switching back to my small brush, I like to make a big puddle. To make it really wet, make like a nice decent puddle so you don't run out of this color and you don't want to grab more water because you will just, oops, dilute it too much. And putting your hand down and then see side to side, up and down, whatever works for you. And trace all your pencil lines. If you squash down, your line will become a little thicker. So make sure your hand is down and only your fingers is doing the work. Don't add pressure. I would rather go really skinny and kind of broken than having too thick because you cannot really get rid of it. Also, by making that puddle, you know that your brush will not get stuck. Sometimes if you mix and there's not enough water, you know, it kind of gets stuck and you cannot get, it's not moving. Right, does it go all the way up? Yes, it does. I don't know if this one goes. I'm going to give it. So skinny, lighter, a little bit more wet. At any point, if you feel you have too much water, just touch your towel and then without touching more paint, paint. And what if you only want to leave your pencil lines? You can. You don't have to do this if you don't feel like it. And then the tricky part is to get this side to look as that side. And sometimes your pencil lines disappear a little. And then you just make them up. And you go. Like that one. I like it. Okay, so now we have most of the parts in. Let me just do it. I'm gonna make a little outline here. And maybe this side. I don't know. I had like this weird open spot, and it was maybe just how I was painting. I'm just gonna fill it in with a line. Okay, now what I want to do with the wash is I want to come back and add a little bit of white. Even though I don't really know if it's necessary, you can definitely stop here. I'm going to take a photo of it over here. So in case I mess it up, because you know, it can happen. Okay, just take a little photo quickly. We already made the wash a little wet. Oh yeah, so it's easy to move. Just move. So I do not like to let my gouache and my watercolor mix on my watercolor plate because it does make a difference. So you don't want that to happen. So if you want to use gouache with your watercolor and you want to mix it, do it maybe in your gouache paint palette. Okay, so I mixed some of the white to get it all. And then what I want to do is, I'm just going to get rid of some of it. I just want to first see, I don't know if it's going to be dark. No, I don't think we should do this part. I think it looks perfect. So I wanted to come back and add a little bit here. So now I'm just going to do it, but I don't know if we should do it. I don't think so. Beauty of changing our minds. So I'm just repeating it now everywhere because I cannot take it away, but I don't think. See, this is why you take photos before you do stuff. No, you know, and then also sometimes you just have to do stuff and then know next time not to do it. Or you do it and then you're like, huh, I like it. I'm gonna give a little white. Oops, not so much. Maybe I should just switch to a small brush. I think small areas need small brush. And then this white is not so fresh. That can be a problem too. I'm gonna give a little sparkle on my eye. And then I'm actually gonna use some of the white on this fuzzy section. Let me see how that looks. Oh, that looks cute. Again, the gouache steps are very optional. You can bring a little bit of the, if you lost some some details that can bring it back, or some light sections. I don't know if it does look cute though. Does it look cute? Today is a cute day. Everything should be cute. Not sure. See, it doesn't even want to focus. It's because so many clouds. Okay, I'm gonna wash my brush really well. I'm gonna put the gouache away. I'm gonna go into the pink, watercolor pink. Because I don't know if you guys can see, I went a little crazy with the white. So luckily, we can do so many layers on top of each other. It's not even funny. And you can paint over almost everything. You can never, like, it's not opaque. So you cannot really delete what you, or paint over what you just did, but you can definitely make it softer. So if you went a little wild with your white, just rain yourself in with some pink layers on top. And drop your brush in the process many times. I think better. Doesn't even want to focus. Anyway, better. Better to do it this way. You can always do a little shadow to make it pop more. But I think this is cute. It needs to be cute. Today is a cute day. I just looked up and I was like, oh wait, that looks very. And then you need to know, which nobody knows, but you need to know when to step away. I give him a little fuzz on the side. Let's see if we want to zoom in now. I give a little fuzz to the side. So it doesn't just end. You can also come back and do a little bit of the small brush fuzziness. So softer and lighter is always better, because then you can come back and add more. And that's it.